This lesson is on the minor pentatonic scale. We're going to spend a very small amount of time talking about what the scale is and the 5 box patterns. You're going to have a PDF with everything in it that is going to be on the screen that we're going to talk about. We're not going to spend much time on the original box patterns. You can get them off of here. But what we're going to do is we're going to break it up into smaller groupings or cells, and we're going to see how we can play this all over the fretboard. I used to have a lesson course called the Uncaged Fretboard. This is basically that idea. We're actually going to take and learn how to play this scale all over the fretboard without really worrying about set scale patterns, and see if we can get you guys playing a little bit more melodically. I'm Mark Wein from Jack's Guitar Tracks. If you look below the video in the video description, it'll say show more. You're going to find links to our PDF. It's a 7-page booklet for this lesson, which has all of the materials for this lesson in it, all of the scale patterns that you're going to need, and anything that you see on the screen. There's also going to be links to backing tracks that you can use to practice over, and some other helper lessons in this series that will actually help you if you don't understand anything I'm talking about here. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the idea that your 5-note pentatonic scale, of which this is actually something that can be derived out of your 7-note major or minor scale. We're going to play all of this stuff in the key of A right now. And we're going to start in basically the E shape from the CAGED system. Like I mentioned before, if you don't understand what I'm talking about there's links below the video that will help you with that. This is basically the E root pattern out of CAGED. We're going to start on the A, and we're going to play what's called the natural minor scale, or the Aeolian mode. And this is going to be kind of our starting point for this scale. All right, so I've got the root, 2, minor 3, 4, 5, minor 6, minor 7, root, 2, minor 3, 4, 5, minor 6, minor 7, root, 2, and then minor 3. If you take the 2 or the 6 out of that scale, you get the familiar box pattern that almost all of us learn before we learn anything about the guitar. All right, and it's going to look like this. It's going to go root, minor 3, 4, 5, minor 7, root, minor 3, 4, 5, minor 7, root, minor 3. And this is the pattern that almost everybody gets taught in the beginning. It's easy to play in. A lot of licks are here, and it's really a great starting point. We're going to kind of forget about this right now, though. If you look in the PDF, you're going to find all 5 of the box patterns, these 5-note minor pentatonic scales in each of the 5 caged positions. You can learn those. There's a ton of video lessons on this stuff already, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to work into the next section, which is a 4-note cell using scale tones. We're going to break this 5-note scale up, and this is not a complete version of the scale, but essentially what we're doing is we're going to take 4 notes, minor 7, root, minor 3, and 4, and we're going to see all of the places that we can play it on the fretboard. And we're going to be starting just with this little box version of it. All right, you're going to see where this is leading in just a second. Minor 7, root, minor 3, 4. If we come up a fret, or actually down 2 strings and up 2 frets, minor 7, root, minor 3, 4. And then we can do the same thing on the first 2 strings, starting on the 8th fret. Minor 7, root, minor 3, 4. So if you have a lick, like say you've got a, right, which is, like an Albert King blues lick. All right, I know that I'm taking that 4, I'm bending it up a whole step to the 5. That's the minor 3, and that's the root. Now, one cool thing about this is I can play a phrase in one part, and answer it in another part. Basically what it does is it gives us the ability to develop a phrase between 2 octaves. It makes it a little bit easier to go someplace forward. Alright. Not the coolest phrase, but it gets the point across. If we move on with what we have here in the packet, we also have it off of this A root right here. So you got minor 7 starting on the 10th fret, 5th string, root, minor 3 and 4. And then you got minor 7, root, minor 3 and 4 on those 2 strings. Notice that we have to move up 1 fret on that one. Now, one of the things is as you get to learn these scales, and a lot of this is about breaking down the patterns that we normally play, so the fretboard just becomes one giant pattern. We're not actually going to be boxed in or siloed by each of those box patterns anymore. But you can look at this like, you know, if I went, which is minor 7 root, minor 3, 4, bending up to the 5, and so on. I could play any phrase anywhere because I know what those notes are relative to the root, and I know where they duplicate all over the fretboard. The next way that we're going to look at this is what I call the 2-3 cell idea. I actually learned this from a Randy Rhoads solo when I was like 17. But any of these pentatonic scales, just like what we were doing, you can actually slide up the fretboard and move on this diagonal line, and your phrases are going to sound a little bit more musical. So I've got minor 7 root, minor 3, 4, just like the last pattern, but I'm also going to add the 5. And then if I go down a string from here, minor 7, root, minor 3, 4, 5. And then that brings me here, 8th fret, minor 7 root, minor 3, 4, 5. I really love playing ideas that I can play on that diagonal. I'll take something like this idea. You know, and just kind of duplicate it and move it around in each of those places. Right, it's really easy to see ideas like that. So I can play in the box pattern. And I've got all the phrases that I normally have there. Right, but then I can also play those 2 and 3 boxes on the diagonal. I can get a little bit more movement, and my phrases actually tend to be a little bit more vocal or melodic. The next part of this, we're going to take that same pattern, minor 7 root, minor 3, 4. There's the 5 there, and then the same thing here. Minor 7 root, minor 3, 4, and then 5. And you can always add the minor 7 and the root for the next section up here. I used to get really stuck in the caged box patterns, and especially with the pentatonic stuff. I think there's a very valid complaint that the cage system, while it's a good starting point, you really need to move beyond it and break it down. And that's kind of what we're doing, is we're taking and we're deconstructing these scales and learning them all over the fretboard in a way that hopefully gives you a little bit more freedom. Because what would happen to me, and it happens to, you know, my students, is that you just get stuck in each of those cages. It's like a silo or a chimney. You know, you just get this little zone of the fretboard you can play, and it's difficult to actually make it musical. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to break that down and give you a more melodic way of playing through the same material.